Hey yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, hop on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast to become a Patreon member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We have news, we have rumors, and things to discuss today in the world of professional wrestling. Before we get started with that, by all means, if you have not done it before, pop on to the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. That is our talk-to-text service, which will allow you to send us your questions, your comments, your concern, anything you want us to discuss or look into ahead of this Saturday night's Going Live at 9:05 episode, where we will take all your calls, questions, and comments and integrate them as best we can into our show. We want to try to get to as many of our loyal listeners as possible throughout the show, so don't waste time, don't hesitate. Get into that hotline, the Sound Off line, 267-642-1160, and get us your comments sooner rather than later. In addition, for those who are into the 256 team tournament, the voting has now closed for the Sweet 16 round. They are tabulating the results for the Elite 8 round, and from what I saw as I was watching the trend of the votes, we are going to be shaping up to an incredible Elite 8 round, and we'll be announcing those matches and discussing the pairings in the Going Live with 905 episode this Saturday night. So, by all means, if that's something you've been participating with, thank you so much for your support. Please keep doing that. And if you want to keep an eye on whatever topics we're going to be discussing on the actual podcast episodes throughout the week, www.frolifeplanning.com/FroPodcast is where we post all of the news bits that we'll be talking about up until we release the episode with that information. So keep an eye on that daily. We try to keep it updated as best we can with all the news and rumors in the world of wrestling. And for today, I want to get started with some of the news that popped up on various outlet feeds today. A monstrous announcement in the world of mixed martial arts / boxing, which is the Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor fight being made official. I know this is a wrestling podcast, but sports fans in general, you couldn't have a podcast today and not mention that. It is probably going to be the biggest draw on pay-per-view in the history of sports and sports entertainment. So, Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, the fight is official, August 26th in Las Vegas. They're finalizing the details now. The contracts have been signed. Both talents have released the announcement on their social media. So if you are a fan, whether it's boxing, mixed martial arts, or you're just a casual sports fan in general, this should be something exciting to watch. You're going to want to check it out, and you want to be one of those people who said, I saw that live. Very cool announcement. I'm going to turn my attention to what we like to focus on here at the Pro Wrestling Podcast, and that is the actual wrestling. So, we do not have a huge episode tonight for you, but we do have some important topics we want to discuss before we get to Going Live at 9:05 on Saturday night. So, first things first, Kurt Angle. There's been all sorts of speculation since he returned to the company about whether or not he was at some point going to wrestle. Well, now the speculation is high, and the Wrestling Observer newsletter even pointed out that the feeling within the organization is that this angle they've been building between Kurt and Corey Graves is leading to something where either Stephanie McMahon or Triple H tries to rise up and take power on Raw, and there'll be some kind of conflict there leading to a match with Kurt Angle and Triple H. Now, they have not fully decided when that match will take place. That's something, if you ask me, better be one of the big four. It's got to be the Mania, the Royal Rumble, the Survivor Series, or SummerSlam. Now, SummerSlam, if you look at all of the discussion, looks like it may turn out to be a really stacked show. So I don't know if you want to rush the match for SummerSlam, or do you want to hold off for Survivor Series and almost do one of those like you're battling for the power of Raw. You know, Kurt Angle's the GM, Stephanie McMahon is the I don't know what you want to call it, the authority figure. But if you want to have that storyline play out at the Survivor Series, I think it makes a lot more sense, and it gives Kurt some time to work through with Triple H a great match and put together something very special, since I just get the feeling WWE's not going to be fair with Kurt and not going to let him wrestle as much as he probably could, or probably as much as he would like to. But it is very exciting to hear that is now in the works to try to make something happen. I fully expect SummerSlam is going to be pretty jam-packed. Many people are already feeling we're going to see Roman Reigns versus John Cena. There obviously Brock and Braun Strowman has been discussed. You still have tons of talent, whether it's AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Seth Rollins, Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, Jinder Mahal. Like, there's so many different directions to take SummerSlam, and you got to fit all those talents in that I don't know how much room there is for a high-profile match like Triple H versus Kurt Angle. Whereas if you go to the Survivor Series, you can easily take a lot of those talents and do a Brand Wars traditional Survivor Series match, and you don't have to have as much time at the pay-per-view for individual matches, because you can combine so many talents into one match. So that's what I expect. That's not something I've seen published today. That's just what I feel in my gut, is that if they're going to do this, and if I were them, I think smart money and smart business would be to do it at the Survivor Series. And another topic that popped up today, the Mae Young Classic. Some of the names have now been announced, several actually. Now the issue for me is many of them, I don't have a clue who they are. Don't get me wrong, they put out descriptions of where these people have been. Some are NXT talents, some are from overseas that were brought in. Some have very, very little wrestling experience whatsoever. For me, if you're going to have a 32-woman tournament, and you're going to call it the Mae Young Classic, you better bring out some of the best talents in the world. And I'll go there. WWE is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, as opposed to Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, or any other promotion you can possibly think of. So here's the thing. You got to get to a point where you have to make a decision. Do you just want to be the biggest company and to heck with what is best for pro wrestling history, or do you want to deliver something that's truly spectacular and truly unique? And the reason I'm going here is I honestly feel like, and with this whole situation with the Broken Hardy characters that has been going on between WWE and Impact Wrestling about whether or not they're going to work out a deal where they can use the gimmick, that tells you that there's open lines of communication there. In addition, the conversation earlier this year about Ring of Honor potentially having a buyout from WWE and that they had meetings, it turned out those meetings weren't for a buyout. It was about, at least the theory is it was about sharing content on the network for different projects related to former Ring of Honor stars. But if it was me, and I was WWE, the Mae Young Classic would be the most unique and wonderfully stacked tournament in the history of pro wrestling. And the way I would make that happen is very simple. I would pay any promotion in the world who had the best 32 female talents that have ever been comprised, and I don't care what amount of money you got to pay, I would pay every promotion to allow me to use their talent and make this truly an amazing female wrestler tournament. I would go to Impact Wrestling and I'd bring in Angelina Love. I'd bring in, Awesome Kong and bring her back, whether you bring her back as Karma or whatever. I would do whatever I had to do to bring in a Gail Kim or a Jade or Sienna or whoever. I really couldn't care less who you bring in, but I would bring in the best of the best of the best from around the world. And I would go and negotiate with those companies to make this deal happen. Because let's face it, if you're Impact Wrestling, you need to turn a profit. If you're Ring of Honor, you need to turn a profit. And they have lent talents to other promotions in the past, just not WWE. This would be a groundbreaking opportunity. Let WWE make it monetarily beneficial to both companies and any other that has a phenomenal talent out there to let their talents appear in the Mae Young Classic. Don't bury everybody's talent, because that would just irritate people and it would kill the potential for the future. But if you were to make something like that work out, it would be the first time in history that WWE would truly stop caring about just their own interests and concern themselves with the betterment of pro wrestling history across the board. And it would show wrestling fans that Vince McMahon and the WWE are truly committed to the best product out there. They get a reputation for being the biggest sports entertainment company, but places like Ring of Honor and New Japan are typically given the moniker of having the best actual wrestling. WWE would have an opportunity to show their commitment to the wrestling side of things by doing something of that nature. Now, of course, I know that's never going to happen, but that's something I would do if I were them. Other tidbits for the day. Buff Bagwell has announced he is going to have a retirement tour. This is not a decision he's come to lightly, but he wants to always go out and perform as Buff Bagwell. And when your name is Buff, there was a quote he put out on his feed about, you got to hit the gym 4 to 5 hours, 4 to 5 days a week for multiple hours a day or whatever it was. And he's getting to an age where that's becoming a challenge. And he doesn't want to go out and look like a shell of his former self, basically. So he's going to be retiring in the spring of next year. So this is his retirement tour on the independents. It's almost a shame that he never got a real run with anybody after being tossed out literally the back door of WWE after his first night appearing on Monday Night Raw. But, some of that obviously was his attitude and his way of doing business. You could say that WWE didn't really give him a fair chance. I know people complained about the match he had with Booker T on Raw, but I never thought that was that bad of a match, even though they swear it was. I feel like Buff Bagwell, there was some missed opportunity. I'm not saying I like the guy. I'm not a huge fan of his work, but I just think from a fan response possibility, they may have missed the boat here. In other news, Paige, it has been announced, is nearing her in-ring return. This is huge because we don't know what WWE is going to do. She posted pictures on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter about her working out in the gym and saying that she just has one more set of x-rays to go to determine whether or not she can be cleared to get in the ring. Once that happens, I anticipate one of two things to happen. Either she would come back to WWE and they would find a way to work around the issues with Alberto El Patron and his hatred, basically, for everybody in WWE in a corporate position. Or, once she is medically cleared, then they can cut her and she won't have the opportunity to, go after them for any kind of wrongful termination or anything of that nature because she was injured while being a member of their roster. I actually hope they find a way to work it out and keep her in the company. I think she's a valuable asset to the women's division that, in my opinion, on both brands has gotten very stale lately. Even with the addition of people like Lana, and eventually there'll be a call-up for Asuka and people like that, I still feel like it's stale. We've seen all sorts of combinations in the women's division for weeks now. It's time to really bring some excitement, and I think Paige could do that. I think WWE would be stupid to just let her go, just because they have an issue with her soon-to-be husband. The other news of the day is Rusev. Rusev has now officially been cleared to return to the ring. That's like the common theme this week. We had Zack Ryder, we had Braun Strowman, now we've got Rusev. Many talents getting healthy, and that's going to make for a couple things. One, it's great because you have more options when it comes to who to push and who not to push, and how to be creative with your booking. But the drawback to that is you only have so much time on each show. I know people complain that Raw is 3 hours long and SmackDown's the better show because it's only 2 hours long, but you still got to make it interesting. And right now, it's been relatively stale on both brands. There's been interesting segments in every show, but I don't think we've seen a real quality show from either brand for a little while now, which is kind of sad when you consider they've probably got the deepest roster they've ever had in the history of the company, and they don't seem to be able to put together the knockdown, drag-out episodes that have made them so popular. Once again, make sure if you come up with a question, comment, something you want me to address on the Going Live at 9:05 episode this Saturday night, just like every Saturday, please leave those comments or questions on the Sound Off line at 267-642-1160. And pop over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/ProWrestlingPodcast if you want to become a Patreon member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family. When you do that, whether you're the dollar assistance of $1 a month, or we'll get your name into the shout outs, or you're the person who wants to go gung-ho all out and support the podcast in the best way possible, our $50 contributors get the opportunity to host a live Going Live at 9:05 episode with me. We'll put together an episode segment by segment, decide what we want to talk about, get you on the phone, and we will do that live so you can get your voice out there as well. So if you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, shoot over patreon.com/ProWrestlingPodcast. As I've said in the past, We have our website up now for wrestling, frolifeplanning.com/fropodcast, and you can see all the topics we're going to discuss coming up in the next episodes. You'll see our list of episodes that were our interview series, our different sponsors. That's where you could check out some of the ones you hear me talk about every episode, which I will be doing shortly, for the different game companies and things that have sponsored the podcast. So thank you to those companies, and we'll get them their shout out just momentarily. That is actually all the time we have for this episode. Check back with me on Saturday night, going live at 9:05. I look forward to hearing from everybody, including my buddy. He's become my one of my most loyal listeners, Barry Harry Larry. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of questions he's going to bounce off me this week. Special thanks, as always, go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects used throughout today's show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to FroLifePlanning/Fro Podcast and clicking the link on the right-hand side of the page. You could choose any one of the three: Sketchy People, Legendary Elements, or Banana Market, all hosted by thegamecrafter.com. And to AlleyRepair.com, contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all of your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. Be sure to shoot over to our website at FroLifePlanning.com for all of your higher education needs. If you are looking to get into college or university, or you just want to examine the different career paths that are out there, that's what we can do for you at FroLife Educational Planning, because FroLife Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with FroLife. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsjsports.com/WWE for the latest articles on the world of pro wrestling. Until next episode, which will be the going live at 9:05 Saturday night, 9 p.m. Take care and have a great week.